All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Whenever you're checking in with us, my credibility glasses, I just located them. They were lost for a few minutes, and I think you'll agree. When I put them on, scary credibility. Am I right, people?
You're right.
I know.
Yeah.
So I have them firmly in place. Albert is with us today. Nice to have you,
thank you.
Albert. And I commend you, sir, on having already tweeted, which is amazing.
What?
I know. An extraordinary thing. I did check it. Albert has already tweeted that we're on the air. Kim continues to play hurt.
Kim, how are you?
For those who are late to the party, she got COVID. It sidelined her for a couple of days, for a few days, actually.
Yeah.
But now she's back with it. But again, she's not 100%, so go easy on her, okay? I know everybody likes to make fun of Kim and take shots at her, but
they do
please
this to me all
today,
the time. I don't know what the hell
I
they do
don't
it
think
for.
you. I don't think you need to.
What?
What?
It is everywhere, that COVID. I want you to avoid it. In California, the numbers are insanely high.
You do not know what you are talking about.
It is a crazy COVID time, my friends, and through it all, making their way, wading through all the germs and the horror of COVID, we've got special guest today, Anthony Davis from the Midas Touch Network. He's our favorite Britisher. He'll be along, actually, in just a handful of minutes. John Rothmann, who is our favorite former KGO talk show host. He'll be here at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk politics with both, although I really want to talk to Anthony Davis about something to which I referred yesterday, I believe. Or maybe must have been yesterday, since it's only Tuesday. Oh, no, it's Wednesday. Could have been a couple days ago. Does it really matter? I mean,
Who are you? Where are you? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, look, Mark, you're not under oath, okay?
What?
You don't have to. Anyway.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
Okay, the thing I wanted to mention to you and have mentioned to you is that Rolling Stone piece, which essentially suggests that firmly in place are 50 to 80 election-denying Trumpers who are looking already to not certify the results of the next election. The thinking is it will confuse things, it will go to the courts, and it'll just turn the next election into chaos. These are people who are essentially loading the situation such that the election will be derailed. The Republicans essentially know, and I'll talk to Anthony about this in just a minute as I say, that they can't win a fair election where everybody gets a chance to vote. So they do things like suppress the vote. They'll reduce the number of polling places. They'll make it much harder to register to vote. These are all things that are essentially voter suppression. But what you're doing with this new, inventive, dastardly, awful thing is you are committing to derailing the election and challenging the results. In other words, I am charged with certifying the election as an official of fill-in-the-blank states. There are a bunch of them. I'll review them with you in a minute. And I'm not going to certify the vote in my county, in my state, etc. And by committing to that ahead of time, you've sort of, you've laid the groundwork for overthrowing the results. So, again, more on that in just a minute.
That has to be the most un-American thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. It is very much against the sort of democratic republic as it's laid out. I think the most what did you say? It's the most anti-American thing that you'd ever heard? I think electoral college is pretty anti-American. I mean, when it comes to suppressing the people's voice, I think the electoral college does it. In fact, I think the system of representation in Washington does it very effectively, suppressing the people's voice. When Wyoming has the same number of senators as California, and Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico have no voting member of that chamber, that to me is completely un-American. So we can discuss.
That's just
it's a
normal
crowded
suppression.
field. It's a
That's
crowded
normal
field.
suppression. That's okay. You've taken it a step beyond when you do the vote certification. Getting in the way of that.
I'm going to talk to Anthony in like 2 minutes, but let me just get you. I really like to do something that's not purely political when we start. And we are
The Mark Thompson Show.
We are a show that emerged, as you know, from California, and so we started in talk radio there, and then we moved the show over to YouTube. Thank you for being here. We're also on all major podcast platforms as a podcast. So check us out there. You may just take us in as an audio offering across the various platforms. But the thing I wanted to mention in relation to Northern California is the park fire. And yes, it's awful, and Kim will continue to update the situation there. You'll recall it was started by an arsonist. I mean, essentially, he lit on fire a car, rolled into a ravine, and that has started this park fire, which is an immense conflagration. It's pulling in firefighters from other states to fight it. But here is a bit of good news in the park fire story. Puppies saved from the park fire were loaded into the rescue chopper, and apparently they were all over the place in the rescue chopper. But the search and rescue member ran 1.5 miles to save this family of Rottweilers in darkness, dust, and smoke amid the chaotic escape of dozens of rural Butte County residents from the exploding park fire.
If that is
last
not the
night,
cutest I've ever seen in my life, that
How
is
about
adorable.
that? A pair of Rottweilers and their 4 puppies were left in a disabled white Chevrolet pickup truck, imagine, beside a remote dirt road in the forest. An inferno was approaching from the south as the owner and others fled for their lives. She had to jump in with somebody else, regrettably leaving the dog, said the county sheriff.
Oh, no.
The owner did notify the sheriff's office that she'd been forced to abandon the Rottweilers, but she was not able to provide an exact location for the truck. It was so confusing that night, the sheriff said. Anyway, the raging fire, raging across 4 counties, 6th largest in recorded history, trees fallen across the road, getting in the way of the attempt to rescue them. But on Saturday morning, I guess this happened, Connor Smith, a 22-year-old helicopter pilot for Butte County, was told by North Valley Animal Disaster Group, which is a Chico-based animal rescue nonprofit, that the Silverado pickup was believed to be near Camp Belleville, which is a hamlet in the mountains northeast of Chico. I mean, there's the amount of focus on this is so impressive. He said that he could take a search and rescue member and land that search and rescue member at a nearby helipad. Helipad's a ding word. Smith lifted off that morning with Trevor Skaggs, who's a Butte County search and rescue training officer. He also volunteers at the Animal Rescue Group. They landed at the helipad east of Camp Campbellville or Camp Belleville. I don't know what it is. And Skaggs competes in ultra marathons. He took off running about 1,000 vertical feet down into a steep-sided canyon. 1.5 miles later, he found the truck. He found the puppies. They were lying in the dirt near the truck.
Oh.
All the puppies started barking at him like, "Who are you?" He was able to coax Mom to take a drink out of his hand. Once she decided that he was okay, all the puppies were like, "We like you." And he led them all back to the helicopter. And then they reached the chopper, and, of course, they were all over the helicopter. The 2 men were thinking, how are we going to load an 80-pound Rottweiler into this aircraft? But they did. The mother dog, once hoisted in, laid down on a seat in the back. Her pups, believed to be a few months old, were a different story. They were all over the place. But the dogs were rescued, and the pictures are pretty terrific.
Sweet.
I'll post them later.
That's one of those things. His wife is probably like, do you have to go running every Saturday? And from now on, he's going to be, yes, I have to save the puppies. I have to be in shape to save the puppies. Yes, I do have to run all the time.
A heartwarming story from a grim overall tale about the the Park fire. So that's the latest.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, how about some politics? I'll get you some other stuff, too. There's a major meat recall in America, and I have Olympics news. But right now, I want to bite off a little bit of politics. This guy is our favorite Britisher, as you know. He does so much work at the Midas Touch Network. He's always, the 5-Minute News has been on a few years, but he's always,
I've been watching the Midas Network like the last couple of weeks. This whole COVID thing, I'm addicted to Midas.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Well, that's quite extraordinary. Well, then let's bring him on without any further delay. Please, everyone, stand. Do we not have him? For the great Anthony Davis? No? Oh, there he is, Anthony Davis. Thank you. Everybody on your feet, goddammit. Is somebody... Thank you. Sorry, there's senior citizens here in the studio, and they can't get to their feet too quickly. I apologize, Anthony Davis. You are the 5-Minute News. You also do the weekend show. And I know and then you do a third show, I believe, on Midas Network, don't you?
That's right. Today, in fact, I do Uncovered with Ron Filipkowski at, what time is it? I think it's 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern today.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about something quite specific, because I know you're familiar with it. And I think it's immensely disturbing, but there might be some glimmer of hope in the fact that it has been uncovered, to use the phrase just used. And that is this piece that I saw in Rolling Stone, which lays out essentially a plan to, and they already have done it, have those who are supposed to certify an election in place, and there are already election deniers committed to not certifying. In fact, they've actually not certified some races early on in this process. In their process as office holders. I wonder if you could speak to this and then speak to why you feel maybe this is a good thing for the Democrats, given the fact that it's been exposed.
Well, it's interesting that it's been exposed. I made a video about it 2 days ago in the morning. That night, MSNBC ran an expose of it as well with Rachel Maddow. The Rolling Stone article, as you said, came out yesterday. We're talking about the swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Rolling Stone identified 70 pro-Trump election conspiracists currently working as county election officials who have questioned the validity of elections or delayed or refused to certify results. And at least 22 of these county election officials have refused or delayed certification in previous years. And this was Trump's plan last time, the fake electors scheme, the legislatures, except it failed. So many of us have said that 2020 was a rehearsal, 2024 is the real thing. And that's what's really worrying about this, is because not only does it have form, but it also was a failed coup last time. They can't afford to lose this time because, they've got all of so much money is resting on it for the Republicans at so many levels. And so they're going to fix it. And this time they have the Supreme Court on side that they didn't have last time. And so my version of this argument, or this story, I suppose, what I bring to this is talking about the Bush v. Gore story from, was it 2000, where the Supreme Court ended up deciding in favor of George Bush.
They actually said stop the count, right? Didn't the Supreme Court say, they were still counting ballots, and they said stop.
Yeah, and so I believe that it's a combination of that story from 24 years ago, combined with a story from 4 years ago, the fake elector scheme, the legislatures refusing to certify. Okay, we don't want to certify it. There's fraud. We're going to send it to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court gets it. Samuel Alito flying the flag upside down. His wife, Clarence Thomas, his wife, an insurrectionist. 3 Trump-appointed judges. They're all in the tank for Trump. And they will choose Donald Trump as the de facto winner. That is my fear. That's what these stories are alluding to. And you know something, Mark? I am really surprised that this is not on every newspaper today. That apart from these sources, these three sources that I include myself in, no one's talking about it.
I agree. We've spoken of it last couple of days, but we're certainly not punching through in any kind of way that can raise consciousness about it. It is, sadly, I think the media cycle that jumps on the shiny object. Kamala Harris is the shiny object right now, which has to frustrate Donald Trump immensely. Prior to that, of course, it was Trump. And this would fit into questions that might be asked to Donald Trump. But again, I say Donald Trump is the shiny object, but in truth, the Biden mental acuity state was the shiny object for probably the month prior.
Yeah, and then the shooting was the shiny object,
right,
which of course, undoubtedly. Yeah. But now, yesterday I made a video about the Project 2025 leader, supposed leader. Right,
yeah,
Paul Dans.
Right.
He's not the leader. The guy was in charge of personnel. It's like he was the fall guy. He was somebody to take the rap for the fact that Trump was furious that people are linking Project 2025 from the Heritage Foundation with Agenda 47, despite the fact that we have video. I mean, the video I made this morning I put out shows video of him celebrating Project 2025, saying specifically it forms the foundation of our policies. And so they're looking for a scapegoat. They found Paul Dans. They've moved him aside. He was never the main guy. Kevin Roberts is the main guy who they announced will be taking over.
There you go.
The whole thing is a sham.
It really is wild. And for those who don't know, I think most of the people who watch the show are aware, but Project 2025, you certainly know what that is. And Anthony's so right. The toxicity of that, Trump was frustrated that that's kind of getting on him, the stink of 2025. So to get that Project 2025 stink off, there's a big shakeup at, quote, the top. But as Anthony says, it's not the top. It's just some guy. And so now the real top guy is saying he's taking over. There's I guess that's sort of in the weeds maybe for many, I'd say, Anthony Davis, tell me whether you agree, that most Americans, and I just came back from Nevada where I was talking to people and I was astounded by how little they really follow it, yet how resigned to or how excited by the choices they were. So in other words, they play that they follow things, but they don't really follow things. And so this is a perfect example. I'm sure this story, as you say, it hasn't really been widely reported, and it just it dies along with the Rolling Stone piece about the essentially these election officials who are going to not certify elections. It's just not getting through the noise.
It dies along with democracy, Mark. That's the worry, isn't it? Because, Kevin Roberts of Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation, I've been posting clips of him saying, we have a plan. The Democrats don't know what it is. It's coming. They're going to be pretty surprised. Well, he's talking about this plan. He's talking about the fact that they have installed these not fake electors as they did last time. It's not about sending, these documents to Congress to be certified. It's about having people there who will refuse to certify the election in these swing states. That's what's different. And they think they've worked it out. It has to be exposed now because we only have 98 days before the election. And 98 days should be enough time for whoever, I don't know who is responsible. Maybe you could help me. Who is the one that's going to deal with this? Who's going to take this through the courts? I presume it should be Merrick Garland as the Attorney General of the United States.
That inspires encouragement.
Exactly. He is, he
weak,
reminds me of he's like a tortoise, isn't he? Like, not just in terms of the speed, but the way the head comes out, with the neck out of the shell and looks around and then goes back inside again. I really do wish that, there are a lot of roles, in fact, we should probably talk about Louis DeJoy as well, who's the Postmaster General, because he's another one of Trump's installations who is absolutely going to make sure that mail-in ballots go slow. And this is what Trump has done. He has installed people in senior positions. Christopher Wray, the FBI director, is another one. Trump switched out James Comey. Christopher Wray is also a Federalist Society guy, a Republican who slow-walked the January 6 investigation. Said to Merrick Garland, probably not a good idea to go after Trump over this because it'll create a constitutional crisis. Meanwhile, Trump is still free and the insurrection is still going on.
Fascinating. I'm glad you mentioned Louis DeJoy, because I just want to mention, I see this, and I'll ask Anthony about this, Trevor, in a second. My jetliner view of the GOP is a simple one related to money. I mean, there are a lot of different aspects and layers to their plan and the power grab, and of course the cultural issues, abortion being one of them, et cetera. But lifestyle issues, issues around freedom. But they essentially want to privatize everything. That's the GOP way. Louis DeJoy wants to essentially kneecap the post office so that private industry can take over, and you'll then be paying an extraordinary amount if you can even get a letter or post, as you might say, from here to there. The Eric Princes of the world, who ran Blackwater, and of course the private army. They want to privatize a bunch of the military, American military. So I see this as their real effort. The GOP, they want their piece of privatizing literally everything, every social service, everything that's part of the government, they want to privatize.
And the reason for that is because then it becomes for profit. And profit ultimately is what America hangs its hat on. And I've learned this from living here. I kind of knew, we talk about capitalism. Capitalism is everywhere now, right? So there's no way that the US could go back to socialism. It's not possible. We are a capitalist nation, always will be, no matter who is in the White House. And I think it's important we make that point. But there is a way of doing it where you don't rinse people to the point that all this profit is not going back into reinvestment in the business. And so that is why it's so frustrating. I mean, look at the boss of Boeing who got replaced today. His pay packet's like $45 million plus bonuses. Meanwhile, 346 people died in 2 plane crashes that he says he takes responsibility for, and he effectively got a pay rise. It doesn't add up, the fact that these executives are paid so much more than the people who work for them. And the people who work for them, regular people, are the ones who are having to effectively take additional jobs to be able to pay their rent. So you can criticize socialism, but you could also ask, well, actually, what does it offer? Well, it actually offers a more fair system where the people who are at the top don't earn a ridiculous amount of money more than the people at the bottom, and therefore the wealth is shared. Conceptually, it's actually a far better system than the one we have.
Well, I mean, the idea somehow that those at the top can contribute to the system that has led them to the top or allowed them to get to the top with the great skills that they may bring to help them get to the top. That system is a system of taxation, and that actually then pours money into social programs and to things that can help lift so much of the American citizenry that is not at the top. But the effort that accompanies the tax cuts is also an effort that wants to cut those social programs. So by cutting taxes on the wealthiest Americans, you are already kneecapping the ability to fund these programs. And then you want to actually specifically focus on those programs to defund. So, we're setting up for what is almost I always imagine Mumbai or New Delhi, where there's a gorgeous Ritz-Carlton, and right outside there are people begging. I feel increasingly, I don't mean to be too extreme in my description, but I feel as though increasingly America's headed that way, with a handful of people with all the money and more people living on the street.
It's already happened. We can pretend it's in the future, but it's already happened. And you only have to look at the homelessness and the numbers and the way it's all changing. And we're all only 2 phone calls away from homelessness in America, because if we get sick and our insurance doesn't cover our medicine, and then, of course, the hospital is for profit and they can rinse you to the tune of $500,000, well, no one's got that kind of money. So where are you going to end up? On the street, and you can't afford a lawyer to fight it for you. I mean, it's a whole thing. So, the UK is not a socialist country, but it is a social democracy. So, and so many countries are social democracies. They are a modern form of socialism whereby the poorest people will never starve. And that is so very important. It doesn't happen here. There is enough money for it to happen here. The US is one of the richest countries in the world. It can afford to pay everybody's sick pay. It can afford to pay everybody's health care. It can afford all of these schemes that Republicans claim are unaffordable. Meanwhile, they want to spend more money on military and things that we do not need to be investing in at that rate. So, it's very frustrating that the narrative is actually the issue rather than the ledger. The ledger actually can afford all of this stuff, but branding it socialism is the reason people aren't into it. It's not socialism, it's just normal. Like if we use maternity leave as an example, I don't even know what it is here. I think you get like 3 or 4 months maternity leave if you're lucky, right? Well, in the UK, you'll get your full maternity. You'll get 9-10 months. In most civilized social democracies, the dad will get 3 months, 4 months, 6 months maternity leave as well. It's civilized, it's normal, it's inclusive, it's respectful. The idea that you have to work until your eyes bleed is an American horror story that somehow has been baked into the American dream. If you work hard enough, well, I'm done with working hard. You should just be able to work. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like just
you're
a
done
regular
with
job.
You're done with working to the exclusion of all else, essentially.
I'm done with having 4 jobs in order to make enough money to pay the rent. Right? There should be one job that enables you to live, to have a little bit spare so you can afford to take a vacation. And unfortunately, the economy has been mismanaged over decades, not just in America, but in all capitalist democracies, to the point that inflation has risen, the cost of living has risen, and wages have stayed the same. And that is at the core of all of our problems. It's like that's why immigration is a problem for people, because they look for someone to blame, because wages didn't rise, cost of living went up. So what do you do about it? Do you blame the government? No, let's blame the immigrants. It's nothing to do with them. So this is an issue of messaging rather than of the actual fiscal aspect of this.
As our election season winds down, I was saying, I said this the other day, I know that Kamala Harris has just entered the presidential race, and it's like, how are they going to pull this together in such a short time? And I made the point that, well, the Europeans do it. I mean, they have these elections that don't last for 4 years or 3.5 years or whatever it is here. I mean, the minute they inaugurate a new president in this country, already a re-election cycle has started, or there are figuring strategies to challenge. In England, I wonder if you can just review, how do the elections work there? It's a much shorter period of time.
Well, the last election came together in 2 weeks.
Right.
That
was like a snap election that they called, though.
Yeah, but it makes no difference. The process is exactly the same. We keep these 6-foot trestle tables in storage where they have these polling places in church halls. They're all in storage. The chairs are all ready to go. The polling booths are all ready to go, folded up. It's like, let's do election day. And they have these really terrible posters that say polling station that look like they were written in 1935. Because they were. And so they get put up outside. And I randomly happened to be in London for the general election 4 weeks ago. And I managed to get my polling, a voting form. And I managed to go in and cast my vote while I was there. And it felt wonderful because it was, it had just been called. A Conservative government had been in for 14 years. They had rinsed the economy. That the country is on its knees economically. And now there is a left Labour government back in power for the first time in 14 years, and they have already lifted the mood of the entire nation. And it's a bit like the feeling with Kamala Harris, reinvigorating the Democrats. People need leadership, and they need change. And stagnation of leadership, whether Trump wants to install himself as a dictator forever after, where you never have to vote again. Don't worry, we'll fix it. I mean, seriously? You want that guy? And so I think, that's why there is a reckoning in November, because we are choosing between dictatorship and democracy, between fascism and freedom, and we're not going to get another chance, possibly ever again. So that's why so many Republicans are going to be voting for Kamala Harris. I heard another governor today saying, I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris and supporting her. He's a Republican governor because he says that Trump does not support the rule of law, whereas Kamala does. That's what this election is about.
Your next visit, I'd love to talk about some of the negatives associated with Trump, and you just identified one of them. That's what made me think of it. But right now we've got to wrap up. However, before I do, Trevor Starr in Hollywood is he's like, I'd say, the deputy of drops on this show. Like he'll hear a drop somewhere and he'll go, Mark, I think this would be a good drop for the show. And you're not accepted. In fact, you have a great drop. And this was lifted from one of your shows, and Trevor sent us
Donald Trump is now the oldest guy, also the weirdest guy.
All right, so that is your drop.
Donald Trump is now the oldest guy, also the weirdest guy.
And Trevor is saying, I would like to hear what Anthony Davis thinks about his Trump is old and weird drop.
Well, maybe I coined that before it was popular.
Apparently. I mean, the weird is now the thing.
I've been using the word weird for at least 2 years to describe him because I couldn't really think of another word. It is weird, just everything about him is weird. Do you see him being interviewed by Fox the other day where they were saying, what does Melania think about the shooting? And he was like, oh, she can't talk about it. She's so traumatized, which means that she must like me. Or maybe love me. And I was like, this is so weird. This is your wife that you're talking about, albeit transactional wife for hire, but that's not the point. The point is that he is on national television going, I think my wife must like me because she's sad about the shooting. Like, let's not normalize this stuff. It is so weird. So I'm down with this kind of whole weird thing. He is weird. But more importantly, he is dangerous. He is dangerous by nature of his weirdness. And
he's dangerous also in he has no impulse control, and he knows nothing. Yeah. And it's remarkable to me that he's attracting as well as he is, although we're a divided country. I mean, I
don't believe those polls, to be honest. I really honestly think that, just remember this, right? In 2016, he won, but he hasn't won anything since. He won because in 2016, he hadn't been president yet. He'd only been host of The Apprentice. So people didn't really know what he was capable of. Now, if you want to list all the stuff that's gone down since he was president, including the reversal of Roe versus Wade, January 6, the court cases, the convicted felon, rape, all that stuff, you want to add all that in, he can't win. It's just not possible for him to win because Americans don't like a loser. So there is no chance Donald Trump is going to win this election, and that's why I'm not looking at the polls.
It still comes down to the Electoral College, and it's a very thin margin. I mean, I just suggest, that I hope you're right. And Karen says we already have socialism in some aspects. Yeah, it's certainly. Well, I'll tell you, we have socialism. You have socialism in bailing out corporate America. That's where you have socialism. Yeah. You saw it happen with the real estate bust. The too big to fail, and you still see it. You see it with subsidies. You see it with the subsidies that the meat industry gets, that the oil and gas industries get. That's socialism. Those are subsidies.
And the military is socialism as well, because you're housing and feeding and training literally tens of thousands of people. Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. No one wants those things taken away, apart from the Republicans. So, socialism is the wrong word. It's social systems. I think if you ism anything, people will get a bit scared of it. But these are social programs. These are social systems that you honestly couldn't live without in the US. And even, getting unemployment, for example. I don't know how long it lasts here. I know it's not indefinite like it is in the UK. In the UK, if you can't work, then you can claim unemployment benefit. It gives you cash. It pays your housing, pays your bills. And, it's just normal. I love it.
Do you need to show up to the unemployment office and show that you're trying to get a job the way you do
every
here?
2 weeks you have to show up.
Every 2 weeks, yeah.
But the only thing you have to do to say you got a job is maybe show them a CV that you've written.
Wow.
Or a resume, as you say.
It's a low bar. Yeah, resume we prefer.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis, the creator of the 5 Minute News, Midas Touch host. Look for him across the Midas Touch network. He's a big star, but he still comes here and hangs out occasionally, and we love him because he is our favorite Britisher as well. Always a window on what's happening in the mother country. Anthony, thank you for spending a few minutes with us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mark. Always a pleasure.
Anthony Davis, everybody. I love it. Please be seated, everyone. As the flourish ends, you can. Good stuff. Find your seats, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, what is happening now? I've had one big star in. Is my other big star waiting?
Yep, Mr. Rothman is standing by.
And how long are we going to keep that Anthony Davis banner up there? Thank you very much. Do I need to do everything around here?
Do you know who I am?
I mean,
I'm kind of a big deal.
I don't understand why I can't get a little help on this show.
This is no picnic, no summer camp.
I do want to recognize Pamela Kirby, who so generously came in with a $20 super sticker.
Big shout
out to Pamela. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
She's a regular, and I do appreciate it. Hey, Trevor Starr, if you're still there, he is the deputy of drops on this show. I'm looking for a couple of Kamala drops, and I'm also looking for the Trump drops, particularly in relation to the one rally where he says, where are my Christians? I'm a Christian, you're a Christian, everybody's a Christian.
Wouldn't you like to be a Christian too?
Yeah, wouldn't you like to be a Christian too? All right. So that is what I'm looking for, and I'm also looking for some stuff from the Fox interview with J.D. Vance, which is pretty great also. So that's if you can get a moment, that would be fun to pull some of that stuff. So thank you for that, and on with the show now.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy's a presidential historian. He's a lecturer. He's a former KGO talk show host and colleague. He's John Rothmann, everybody. Hello, sir. Nice to see you.
How are you? Good to see you.
We're always listening to some procedural thing. We always catch you in the middle of monitoring something. And
Donald Trump speaking to the Black Broadcasting Association, a fascinating interaction. And, well, maybe we'll talk about that too.
Did he say, I love it when he says, where are my blacks? Did he say that?
He hasn't said that yet, but it's a very interesting situation because he's very defensive. He speaks not to answer questions, but to make his points, which is not unusual for a politician. And so it's an interesting hour, and we'll no doubt be hearing reviews of it all day.
Yeah. Exactly. I thought it was interesting to note the offense that Kamala Harris is playing around the immigration issue. In fact, I might have Albert, do I have that? Kamala Harris talking about the fact that, immigration and the economy are seen as the two vulnerable things that Kamala Harris has to defend. And what she's done is something very effective. She has suggested that the Democrats actually crafted a deal. It was a Republican deal, largely, crafted by a right-wing senator. And the reality is Donald Trump sidelined it. He derailed it for political reasons.
We talked about that when it happened, I would remind you, Mark.
No, yeah, exactly. We spoke about it on the show, and of course, the reality is, though, that she's using that to beat back the immigration criticism. Do you have it, Albert, or am I? Yeah, here we go.
Administration worked on the most significant border security bill in decades. Some of the most conservative Republicans in Washington, D.C. supported the bill. Even the Border Patrol endorsed it. It was all set to pass. But at the last minute, Trump directed his allies in the Senate to vote it down. Right.
There you go.
Harris
Thank you for that. I want to ask you, John Rothmann, how the Harris campaign is taking the enthusiasm and now rolling it out into substantive discussions, or at least mentions of the sort that we just seen, and how you see this proceeding forward.
Okay, first let me begin by saying that is exactly what Donald Trump did. He instructed his Republican allies in the Senate to defeat the bill because he said it will help them, not us. And that's the reason it lost. So let's be clear. Kamala Harris is exactly correct on that point. How is her campaign proceeding? Her fundraising is phenomenal, precedent setting. her ability to arouse interest, you can see the grassroots interest that's come about. It's really quite remarkable. And if you take a look at the polls, if you want to believe polls, they are indicating that Kamala Harris is truly competitive and maybe even ahead in some cases of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is on the defensive. That's the reason why he won't commit really to debate, because she is a prosecutor. And those of us who've known her and interviewed her know that she's very tough and tenacious. And I think Donald Trump has something to worry about. So the point is now, I would say the election is fairly even. We don't know yet what the impact will be. There are 8 swing states roughly, which we are going to watch very closely. And as you and I discussed, we will go through all the polls on those states as the campaign evolves. Let me also
in that spirit, Albert, I would want just to play a little bit. You have I believe there's a discussion of polling as of this morning. I would just let to play that for John, if we can rally it. Here's a little run at the numbers here, John, and then we'll talk to you on the other side. Here we go.
Back, and I want to sort of create a timeline here to give you an understanding of just how much the entrance of Kamala Harris into this race, as well as the post-RNC bump for Donald Trump, has changed.
These are among registered
voters.
Map.
We were looking at a potentially much lower turnout this go around in 2024 than 2020. So this is almost certain to vote in the election. You look post-debate 2024, look at that. It was just 55% of registered voters. That was actually the same as it was pre-debate, 55%. It was significantly lower than it was in 2020 during the summer when it was 60%. But look at where we are now. We are now at 62% after the RNC, after Kamala Harris gets into this race. And that is actually a higher number than what we saw during the summer of 2020 when
these
it was 60%.
Are numbers related to people who are certain to vote in the election. He's saying it rose 12%.
What voters are saying,
stay with us for a second.
It's actually possible we'll see higher turnout than what we saw in 2020, which is what you pointed out was record turnout. So quite the shift here. It's not just enthusiasm. It's actually people saying that they're going to go out and almost certainly vote.
If you believe what voters are saying with that guy.
I mean, if we don't, then this is all not going to work.
Well, it's all funny money anyway.
Yeah.
Why?
Why is it? Well, throughout this entire cycle, we've been pointing out that there were a ton of voters who disliked both Biden and Donald Trump. So pre-RNC, right? 20% in the New York Times polling, 20% in Ipsos polling. Look at where we are today. Look how dramatically
20% don't like
dropped.
Biden and Trump.
Look at this, New York Times down to 8% who say they dislike Harris and Trump. How about Ipsos? The same pattern, 7%. This is very different now than what we saw prior. It looks a lot more like 2020 when it was just 3% who disliked both major party candidates, and very much unlike what we saw in 2016 when it was 18% in the exit polls, which looked a lot more like what we saw earlier in the year. So the fact is, voters are much more apt to at least like one of the candidates, and I think that's part of the reason why voters are much more likely to turn out, because if you dislike both major party candidates, why actually turn out and vote?
Yeah, he makes a good point there. Okay, so essentially, it's Harris who has changed all that arithmetic, John.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah. So
the enthusiasm for Harris, I mean, I talk to a lot of people and I speak a lot of different places, and I really think I've got a sense of a pulse. And that is that Harris has engendered enthusiasm that Democrats didn't have. Listen, she's going to be 60 years old if she is elected president. She is vigorous. She is relatively young. And when you put her on a stage with Donald Trump, who will be approaching 80, it's a huge contrast. So my sense is, if the enthusiasm continues, if the money continues to roll in, and let me say one more thing, and that is that people don't vote for, they vote against. And I think the people who are voting against Donald Trump are overwhelming in their numbers.
Interesting. Janet I posted it up there. Janet saying, my daughter just pre-registered to vote in this year's election. She turns 18 7 days before the election. Her friends that are just turning 18 are also going to vote. So you have a reinvigorated young voter base, perhaps.
Yes, and that's what Donald Trump is worried about, among other things.
Now, people are saying 60 is relatively young, despite what it is true. John is right about that. So, John, this was being talked about sort of as a fever dream, as a sugar high, as a temporary thing, this jolt of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. You see it how in terms of it? I mean, obviously, as you suggested so beautifully, she's put together the tremendous fundraise. I mean, record-breaking fundraise. And
$200 million.
Yeah. And then these kinds of enthusiasm polls do suggest that there might be some staying power here.
I think there will be, but you have to understand, campaigns are fought on mistakes. When you make a mistake in a campaign, it's exaggerated. I listened to Donald Trump for the first 20 minutes of the broadcast this morning. He's not effective. His base will love him, but he's not branching out. And to win, you have to branch out. And let me just point out, J.D. Vance has not been a great asset to the ticket. You haven't seen the huge bump that generally happens after a convention. So this is going to be interesting. And who Kamala Harris chooses as vice president also will be interesting to see. And now the governor of Minnesota is in the running as well. Very folksy, very knowledgeable, solid guy, served in Congress. Kamala Harris has a challenge. She has to present herself to the American people. One last point, and then I know I've got more questions. Both camps are trying to define each other, and that is going to be critical. I listened on to CNN and Fox on Sunday. If I believed what I heard on Fox about Kamala Harris, she's the worst thing that ever happened to the United States. If I believe what I heard on CNN, she's balanced, she's approachable, she's solid. It was such a contrast. And so the information which is spinning will depend on who you listen to. Who was the last person you talked to? And that, I think, is going to be critical. Let me just point out that both Trump and Harris are buying ads in all the swing states. Mark, if we were still on a commercial radio station, are those stations in those swing states would have paid our salaries and some.
It's interesting because John just made a point, and I'll just make this as an aside. What is keeping legacy media in business, these right-wing radio stations with these, blowhards like Sean Hannity, and I don't know, you can tell me who the latest ones are.
Mark Levin, Laura Ingraham.
Thank you. What's keeping them in business is the election period, because they carpet bomb the area with election ads, and those election ads cost, and it's wall to wall, as I say. So John is right. Now that legacy media is losing a lot of legacy advertisers like movie companies and car companies, you end up with this being the lifeline, essentially. But yeah, they are, from what I'm told, the Trump campaign, I thought I read this maybe yesterday, Trump campaign is spending 4 times what the Harris campaign is spending in TV ads in those swing states right now, attacking Kamala Harris. I don't know how effective that stuff is, but I know that political consultants get paid based on those media buys. So I think they tend to still buy on legacy media. I feel like digital media is
Mark, we're in the wrong business. But you understand, it is defining the candidates early. If you can define a candidate negatively or positively before October 1st, you've gone a long way. And remember, we have something else in this country, early voting. It's not like we used to do where every November 8th, we all went to the polls. It doesn't work that way anymore. There will be voting in this country beginning in September, the end of September. And so hitting these swing states, hitting them hard with these ads is going to be critical. One other element that I think is important is mistakes. And I've said that before, but I want to just reiterate it. We judge candidates in large measure, not on the positive things they say, but on the mistakes that they make. And so those mistakes will be certainly emphasized, and I would point out exaggerated, depending upon whether you're watching Fox, CNN, or MSNBC.
In that spirit,
or listening to the Mark Thompson program. Naturally.
There you go. Thank you for throwing that in. The general sense is that VP doesn't really help the ticket. It might help get you a state. It might help balance the ticket a bit, but people vote typically for top of ticket is the conventional thinking. And
that's what Donald Trump, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want you to know that's what Donald Trump said this morning. He was asked about J.D. Vance. He said, you're not voting for J.D. Vance. You're voting for Donald Trump. You're voting for me. And that is the emphasis he's going to make. I would suggest that the contrast will be Kamala Harris. I'd bet everything on saying that she is going to talk about the asset of the number 2 on the ticket. which is why she's going to somebody with vast experience. Remember, J.D. Vance has only served in the Senate less than 2 years. It's a huge gap, and frankly, I use the expression "experience counts," and I think that's what the Democrats are going to push very, very hard.
Well, J.D. Vance is a person who was gifted the seat that he has in the Senate by Peter Thiel, who gifted him a spot running one of Thiel's companies, then gifted him another spot with one of Thiel's companies.
Nobody knows who Peter Thiel is, but you will explain it. You can Google him. You can read about him. You can understand his Republican roots and also his roots in deep-seated MAGA movement.
Right. I mean,
Google it.
You have the reality of a tech oligarch who is part of the PayPal bro world, who is able to literally put two people in the Senate based on his it ended up only being one, but he gave each, in this case we're talking about J.D. Vance, $15 million, and that that essentially buys you a seat in the Senate. But more to the point, he's the one who put pressure on Donald Trump to pick J.D. Vance, along with a point I've made before. Little Donald Jr. and Eric both had daddy's ear also on this, and that's how we end up with J.D. Vance. And so the question comes, you've mentioned the negatives. Aren't they playing catch-up the more they have to back and fill about remarks made by J.D. Vance?
Yes, if anybody pays attention to a vice presidential nominee. And that's the real question. I don't know an election except 1960 where who was nominated for vice president mattered. And the reason it mattered in 1960 was because Lyndon Johnson was able to swing Texas to Kennedy. And that's what really put Kennedy over the top, that and Dick Daley in Chicago.
Did the Tom Eagleton spin out, then Sergeant Shriver, did that affect things, or was it such a landslide that you couldn't really point to that?
George McGovern was losing already, but the minute he said that he backed Tom Eagleton 1,000%, then dumped him and took Sergeant Shriver, who, aside from us, remembers that Sergeant Shriver was the substitute nominee.
Yeah.
But remember, the minute McGovern did that, the election was over. Because how do you judge a candidate for president on decisions, who they choose for vice president?
So where do we end up here, John? Do we end up with no debate? Does Trump actually cave and debate Kamala Harris? He seems...
I can't tell you. I can't tell you the answer. I can tell you that in every election since Jerry Ford and Jimmy Carter in 1976, there has been a head-to-head, not debate, but joint appearance. And it's interesting. I went back and I looked at the 1960 count, and the Congress issued transcripts, and they called them the joint appearances, not the debates, because these are not debates. You and I know what a debate is. These are joint appearances. And I don't know that Donald Trump can resist doing it, but if I were Donald Trump, I'd be worried. Kamala Harris is a prosecutor. She's not going to have any compunction about explaining exactly the problems that she has with Donald Trump. And she'll do it with clarity. I've watched her in a courtroom, and I've watched her on television. I've interviewed her on the radio. I can tell you she's very, very tough on that. And if I were Donald Trump, I would be concerned. But understand, and you already know it because you've repeated it, the people who are voting for Donald Trump are going to vote for Donald Trump no matter what. When he said he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and his supporters would still support him, he's absolutely right. And the people who don't like Trump, who are supporters of Kamala Harris and, yes, Joe Biden, are going to vote against him no matter what. What's going to matter are a few key swing voters.
Right.
They are the ones who will influence this election. I don't believe it'll be a landslide. But for Donald Trump, making a serious mistake would be an earthquake. And if he can paint Kamala Harris in the negative terms that he's trying to do now, and by the way, I think he's making a mistake because he's ridiculing her, and I think that's a mistake. I think Kamala Harris is clearly got an advantage at this moment. And I want to emphasize that. Somebody asked me who's going to win the election. I don't want to predict who's going to win. I can tell you what I can see today. And all you have to do is take a look at the polls and see the enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, and frankly, the enthusiasm against Donald Trump is rising.
Well, there is a big negative. I think John is so right about that toward Trump, and there are big positives associated with Kamala Harris. And no candidate is perfect. I don't mean to be an apologist for Kamala Harris, but I think she does a good job when she talks about the border and the border bill that essentially was derailed by Donald Trump. I want to quickly, in my last minute with you, ask you about what's going on in the Middle East as Hezbollah gets involved in what is an already volatile situation and Israel hits back. I wonder if you can summarize sort of the events of the last week and where we are.
The Israelis are making clear with Hezbollah an attack in Beirut, a successful attack, but more significant.
But go back, John. Why did they attack?
Because they are hitting Hezbollah's operatives. They are hitting the people who have engineered much of the turbulence in the Middle East. And the most important
but because they,
strike,
I thought, maybe I'm wrong about this. I mean, you really follow this region more closely, but I thought that Israel was attacked by southern Lebanon, Hezbollah, and then
it has been.
But a bomb had
residents,
reached Tel Aviv. Is that correct or not?
That's correct. 80,000 residents of southern Lebanon, Jews, Israelis, and Druze have fled because of the fear. And you're absolutely right. Nobody talks about the 80,000 people who have been displaced. And that's a very important point.
But I'm just trying to distinguish. I mean, in the tit-for-tat world of the Middle East, I'm trying to, kind of get what the tit-for-tat is here. Hezbollah
to knock out Hezbollah leadership.
They fired a bomb toward Tel Aviv. They fired a missile toward Tel Aviv. It landed. It killed people. And so the Israelis struck back. And now this is where we pick up the story as you've picked it up. Right. So you've got senior
to what happened yesterday, the assassination of Hania. And this is very, very important. This was a key man in Hamas. And the Israelis took him out in Tehran, in Iran, where he was visiting for the inauguration of the new president. The Israelis are making clear, and Benjamin Netanyahu in a press conference this morning, whatever you think of Benjamin Netanyahu, like him, don't like him, that's not the issue. He said, we are going to hit these people and we are going to succeed. And whatever you say about Netanyahu, he's right. The Israeli efficiency at getting rid of enemies is real. Now, here's the question for you. Will getting rid of the enemies solve the problem? And the answer is no. The simple fact is that the hatred that exists against Israel, the determination to destroy Israel, is so real. There is another caveat that I have to raise. I believe that Iran now has a nuclear capability. I believe that capability is recognized by everyone involved. And that's why everyone is being very careful. Not only are the Israelis impacted by that, but Saudi Arabia is impacted by that. And that means we are directly involved in that as well. So how this escalates, and it will escalate. I spoke with friends in Israel this morning, and I spoke with my son, who is in Tel Aviv at this very moment, and he said to me, we know that something's coming, and they are right. How will this affect American support for Israel? Let me just indicate to you that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have both made statements affirming American support for Israel and the right of Israel to defend itself. What that means is that the issue of the Middle East should not be a partisan issue in American politics in 2024. But this is going to be a dicey situation. We're going to have to watch it carefully. And believe me, I'm going to. You know, I'm away for a month. I'm not going to be with you. This is my last week with you.
Well, I didn't approve this, but I will.
Are you going to deduct from my salary?
I will. I was just about to give you a big bump too. Wes asks again back to domestic politics, and we're now way over time with John, so I'll just ask him quickly. Do you think Trump is also worried that if he loses, he will end up in jail?
It's a very interesting question. I don't know if he'll end up in jail. For Donald Trump, losing the election would be a greater punishment than any other legal remedy. I cannot let you go without talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have to do it because Kamala Harris is being attacked, basically saying if she weren't a black Asian woman, she wouldn't have gone anywhere. Let me tell you, that's absolute rubbish, and I think it's falling flat. And I think Donald Trump will suffer. But no, I look, Donald Trump wants to succeed. This is his vindication. If he is president, he will make sure all the legal cases are dropped. If he is not president, I think these cases, particularly January 6th, will be pursued. And I think Donald Trump understands the implications of that.
John, have a great trip. I don't want to ask where you're going. It's none of my business. So where are you going?
We are going to go to Amsterdam, where I will spend a week with my wife and my older son. And then we're going on a cruise. And then I will be back. And I have to tell you, it's killing me to be away during these times. So I want to thank you, Mark, for agreeing that no political news will be generated during my absence. And I will be back with you in the first week of September. And thank you very much, Mark. It's always a pleasure.
Well, John, we love you. And if something happens and you want to jump on you can join us via cell phone. I joined from a cruise ship one night when something big happened with David Katz and David K. Johnston. We were all on together. And it does, with the Starlink and whatever is on the cruise ship, you can actually do it. So I don't know if you're on a cruise ship or where you are, what kind of cruise, but my point is simply that if the moment comes and you want to break the glass and pull the handle and come on, we'd love to have you. So
I know who to call. And
exactly.
Thank you very much. And Kim, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Oh, that's sweet. Good words from John Rothmann. John Rothmann, everybody. Bye, John.
Bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody in the chat. What really great audience members we have. I have to say the regulars on this show really support us. We are a Patreon and PayPal supported show. So without our Patreon and PayPal supporters, we don't exist. But how about this? This is from Lee Kopp. And Lee and Eileen, his wife, have been with us since the KGO days. We were KGO Radio in San Francisco. And Lee writes, Eileen and I just celebrated our 50th anniversary this month, which is an extraordinary thing. Wanted to say again how much we love the Mark Thompson Show and share a bit of our joy with you. You all make every day more fun and informative. And he sent us $50.
What?
I know,
Nice.
a $50 super chat. Pretty terrific, I got to say.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. Big shout out to Lee Kopp and Eileen, and happy anniversary, kids.
Big shout out.
Yeah. 50 years together. Ms. Organic with a $5 super sticker. Thank you, Ms. Organic. Appreciate you also. Chico Karen says, for the Rottweiler story, heartwarming in the middle of all the devastation. Yeah, wasn't it? That's why I really liked it. Thank you.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to Chico Karen.
I know
and
we've
Wes,
seen this from Wes, but we had one slip in right after the show ended yesterday from Wes that we didn't get to.
Oh,
So,
okay,
put it
there
up
you go,
again.
because we answered that question.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to Wes. He's always supportive, and we appreciate that. Len says, January 6th, Harris will send election to the House for Trump to win. MAGA installed as county election officials will refuse to certify the votes, blocking the state certification. That essentially is the plan, Len. We discussed before, as you're aware. We discussed it with Anthony Davis. I'm unclear as to how far they'll get with it. They may proceed with it anyway, because that is the plan, the strategy, and there are those elements in place to make it happen, right? There are already those people in those positions to end up with a lack of certification on your election. Or it's been exposed, and so it may be harder to pull that off. But I'll take your point. This is from Teacher Lori. Glad Harris is pushing Project 2025 and Trump's derailing bipartisan immigration bill. Not seeing clips on Fox or Trump Vance refuting. It means it's effective, and they don't want to bring attention to it. No, interesting. Yeah. I think it is effective. As I was saying, I think it's taking the offense, which is exactly what Kamala Harris should do. So Chris, who is I don't know if he's a Trumpy, he's kind of Trumpy adjacent if he's not a Trumpy. Kamala is the perfect candidate for Trump to make fun of. Maybe, but he hasn't really gotten too creative about making fun of her laugh or whatever. I mean, really, dude, I don't care about that. But maybe, if you're just in that business of making fun of people and ha-ha, aren't they a-hole libs? Well, then that's going to work for you, So, Kim's news, and then I've got so much more. And Belinda Waymouth in this hour with It's the Planet Stupid. We have a lot to get to there. But I will share with you stories. Some of them are political, but a few of them have to do with the Olympics. And again, I don't give you the medal count. I share with you sort of the offbeat, different controversial stories when it comes to the Olympics, and we'll have some of those also in the next hour. Smash the like button like a boss.
With your iron
It
rod.
helps us. Please hit us with a thumbs up. Also, any ways you share the show across your social media, that helps increase our footprint. So we appreciate it. It helps grow the show. That is the plan. Kim's News and more as we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by Coachella-Valley-Coffee.com. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to announce her running mate in the coming days. Harris will hold her first rally with her new vice presidential pick Tuesday in Philadelphia.
What?
The location,
no, it's happening fast, yeah.
Yeah, the location suggests that she could choose Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
I see.
And this is their new hoax.
He is considered to be on her short list. Other potential running mates include Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Wow.
But it's happening in Philadelphia. So
Can you let him finish, sir?
Are they trying to fake us out?
Finished. Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow. This is extraordinary. I think it's Shapiro or Walz, right? Oh,
Well,
maybe it's Bashir.
Maybe it's
Didn't
Kelly.
we say yes? Bashir got the additional security detail. Remember we told you about that? That just happened yesterday.
Yeah, but isn't he from Kentucky?
Yeah, but that's a red state. So
yeah, but that state doesn't matter when it comes to the Electoral College.
No, it doesn't. It matters just in terms of trying to bring over maybe borderline fence sitters who are GOP. But you're right. If you really want to try to deliver Pennsylvania, you'd figure Shapiro.
Yeah, you'd have to.
But, I mean, and I've seen it in the chat, so I hope you won't take this the wrong way, but Shapiro is Jewish, and we are, I think, a country filled with anti-Semites, Jew haters, and I think we're also a country filled with racists.
And misogynists.
And misogynists. So you put those three things together, you already have a person of color who's also a woman on the ticket.
Hey,
I don't know if you want to add one more thing.
It's a hate trifecta. Winner!
Oh my God!
I know. Well, and that's what I've read stories about, opinion pieces, saying that Vice President Harris really has to pick a straight white dude,
it's
right,
true.
to kind of counteract her blackness and femaleness, which is such utter BS. But
No,
I guess
it's
that's the
BS,
way the
but
world works, right?
You live in a BS country.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
Thank you.
When it comes to race and religion, it goes way beyond 30%. So, and again, some of it is even happening at a sort of subconscious level. So in any case, I would suggest, no offense, but I think Governor Shapiro may not end up on the ticket. But look, he's very popular and very good. I mean, it's really awful. But yeah, her husband is Jewish. I'm not saying that, there aren't, thank you, shadow producer Calvin Wong. But I am just suggesting that anti-Semitism is everywhere. And I don't know that you want to steer into it that way. But,
What are you saying there's too much Jewish on the ticket with her husband already? And so now she has to.
Her husband's not on the ticket, but I'm saying, but
you
yeah,
know what I mean. Involved.
Yeah. Here is a teacher, Lori, who too much misogyny and anti-Semitism still in the USA. Hate to say, as Jewish woman, Harris needs white Christian hetero male as VP. I mean,
isn't that
sorry,
the sad fact?
Teacher Lori G is right. And here, I'll just say this. You cast a movie this way, you cast a TV show this way, and you cast a political campaign this way. You decide on messaging. You decide who balances your ticket. You decide on any number of things philosophically, but you also play to the superficial. And this is a superficial thing that shouldn't matter. But in the deeply tribal way in which we are deciding things as human beings, sadly, it's something to consider. So that's the point I'm making.
So she picks someone who's not a straight white guy. Do you look at that candidate and think, that's it, it's over?
No, that's it. It's over, meaning the election is won?
Yeah, like she's lost because she didn't pick a straight white dude.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If she doesn't pick a straight
or do you celebrate
one.
the fact that she went against,
No, you celebrate it because libs like to celebrate stuff and not like to win stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think you want to win. So I'm telling you straight up, hold the celebration and you can celebrate winning. And then you can populate your administration, as Biden has done, with all the colors of the rainbow and with all of the disparate views that help inform good decision making. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing your celebration, woohoo, we've got a gay black man on the ticket. That's great. Or we've got whatever the thing is. We have a gay Muslim man or a gay Jewish guy. I'm telling you, these are things that's a short-lived celebration when I think the voter support evaporates. Sorry to say it, but that's the reality of America.
Aren't you Debbie Downer? Boeing has a new president and CEO. Kelly Ortberg, a former executive with aerospace company Rockwell Collins, will take the helm August 8th. The company is hoping Ortberg can help turn things around after a slew of safety issues have led to losses of trust and revenue. The most recent string of troubles starting January when a door panel blew out on a 737 MAX 9 flight, an incident that eventually led to the resignation of the CEO, Dave Calhoun. The family of Sonia Massey and civil rights leaders are calling for justice in her case. Reverend Al Sharpton joining Massey's relatives as well as attorney Ben Crump yesterday in Chicago to demand federal and state police reforms that would prevent officers from moving rapidly from one department to another. The group believes these reforms would have prevented Massey from having been shot and killed by a former Sangamon County deputy earlier this month inside of her Springfield home. There is a new lawsuit that is accusing online ticket platform StubHub of using predatory practices to trick customers into paying more than they expected to pay. The suit filed Tuesday by Washington, D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwalb argues the company entices customers with lower prices for tickets before tacking on all those fees. The suit says violates D.C.'s consumer protection laws, hence the lawsuit against StubHub. So
good for them. It's 100% true. It's disgusting what they do. They suck you in with one price, which is already exorbitant usually, and then they tack on, shipping and handling type crap. It's absolutely outrageous. And the most important thing is that those fees are hidden from you until the very end of the process. And that is the real deal buster for me.
Yeah, it's quite the bummer. And maybe we'll see if anything happens. I tend to think that one lawsuit from DC might not make that big of a difference when you're talking about how much money they're making. I don't know. Yeah. So if you're watching the Olympics, have you seen the Clark Kent of the Olympics?
He's great. The gymnast.
Yeah. He is a gymnast, and he's got these glasses. Makes him look rather Clark Kentish. Here's a
Do
picture.
we have a picture of him? Or
yeah,
no?
I have him putting him up right now.
Thank you. Good.
There he is. So he's very cute.
Yeah.
His parents of the U.S. men's gymnastics pommel horse specialist are reacting now to his newfound fame. Stephen Nedorosik has earned his nickname the Clark Kent of men's gymnastics after he took off those glasses and helped the U.S. men's team win their first Olympics medal in 16 years on Monday. His mother, Cheryl, says that his coach at Penn State decided that he'd be a pommel horse specialist after recruiting him. So there you go. The Clark Kent of the Olympics.
Incredibly good. He takes off those glasses, and then he's just this stud who rocks it. And who was it? Tom said, that he's stolen my credibility glasses. He does have his own version of credibility glasses going, it would seem.
They had a picture of him right next to Clark Kent, the fictional Clark Kent. It is uncanny. It really is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, all these guys, men and women, their bodies are so athletic and, toned. It's incredible. So he looks like Superman or a superhero right away. But so excited for U.S. gymnastics. Very nicely done.
Something maybe we haven't talked about enough, but we lost an icon in the political community, and remembrances continue through Thursday in Texas for late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. She died earlier this month at age 74 after a long illness. Her body lay in state earlier this week at Houston City Hall. President Biden came to pay his respects. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to attend Jackson Lee's celebration of life Thursday at Fallbrook Church. You mentioned the Park Fire earlier. This is a massive fire that is growing bigger near Chico. It is now the state's fifth largest at 387,000 acres, bigger than Los Angeles, nearly half the size of Rhode Island. The Park Fire sparked exactly 1 week ago today. It has already burned through 300 homes and buildings, sent 2,600 people running for safety in the counties of Butte, Tehama, Plumas, and Shasta. Some evacuees have been allowed to return. You heard the story of the Rottweiler puppies that were rescued as well, but this fire continues to rage. The state of emergency is being declared for another California wildfire. Governor Gavin Newsom flew over Kern County yesterday to see the damage close up and meet with first responders. He also visited the historic mining community of Havilah, nearly wiped out by the flames there. The Borel fire has been burning for 1 week now as well. 53,000 acres it has burned, and Governor Newsom has secured federal assistance to help with that response. Orange County public health officials are warning people about a possible measles exposure near Disneyland. Last Saturday and Sunday, a tourist visited 3 businesses while infected with measles. They visited a Walmart on Anaheim Boulevard, a CVS pharmacy on Catella Avenue, and the Anaheim Global Medical Center Emergency Department. The Orange County Health Agency says anyone who visited those places at about the same time as the tourist should make sure they're immune to measles, which can spread very quickly from person to person. A court is temporarily blocking the Biden administration's junk fees rule for airlines. The 3-judge panel from the Federal Appeals Court said the ruling goes over the Transportation Department's authority and will irreparably harm airlines. The rule could require airlines to disclose extra fees on purchases. A group of major airlines sued the Biden administration in May over its crackdown on junk fees. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health urging people to steer clear of a dozen beaches. The warnings issued Monday due to higher bacteria levels in the water. It applies to the beach 100 yards on either side of the Santa Monica Pier, Malibu Lagoon at Surfrider Beach, Inner Cabrillo Beach and in San Pedro, and several other beaches as well. The water quality at those locations must be back within health standards before those warnings are lifted. And right now, it's gross.
South sounds
Pasadena.
like the water at the Olympics for the triathlon.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a big story,
yeah.
the water at the Olympics. Yeah,
and
thank you,
the
Albert.
athletes have to jump right in and go for it. Ew.
Well, I mean, they actually were talking about not running certain events that involve swimming because of it. Now they're going to say, hey, it's safe.
Oh,
really? That's wild. Because yesterday it wasn't. Yeah.
The mayor's off on the side. Yeah, it's fine. Not
right. It's just like the mayor in Jaws.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The beaches are safe, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. We'll see how many people get sick. In South Pasadena, they are the first city in the nation with a fleet of all-electric police vehicles. The South Pass Police Department unveiling 20 new Teslas on Monday. Instead of needing gas, the Teslas will use a series of chargers installed at City Hall. Other cities have some electric vehicles in their police fleets, but the South Pasadena Police Department is the first to go entirely electric.
Ah.
Speaking of vehicles, Uber and BYD are announcing a multi-year strategic partnership designed to bring 100,000 new BYD electric vehicles onto the Uber platform across key global markets. The effort will launch the first in Europe and Latin America and then expand to include markets across the Middle East, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. A 21-year-old Harvard dropout is unveiling an AI-powered constant companion. According to Avi Schiffman, Friend is a wearable pendant that fights loneliness by engaging in conversations and essentially keeping the user company. Pre-orders for this $99 wearable are being taken now. Delivery is expected in January.
Oh.
And lastly,
yes,
how bad would you want to go to the Olympics? I mean, if you're an athlete, what would you give? Pinky finger, maybe?
You're saying you have to cut off a part of your body for it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. How bad do you want to go?
No, I'm not cutting off any of the body too.
No, none.
Yeah. No.
Well, that's.
Why? Well, you'd cut something. You'd cut something off.
I'm not saying I would.
Okay. Well, then don't say you wouldn't. You don't say it like that, Kim. If you wouldn't do it, then why are you being so tough on me for not doing it? I mean, that's just
I blame you.
Okay.
You might not want to go badly enough. You don't want to go as badly as Matt Dawson.
Okay. What did Matt Dawson do?
He's a hockey player who opted to have part of a finger amputated in order to compete at the Paris Olympics.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
Oh my God!
Yeah,
pulled a Ronnie Lott. Ronnie
Lott did it. Ronnie Lott did it. They just cut his finger off.
What? He's a 30-year-old man from Australia, Matt Dawson.
Right. So you've had 30 good years with all your digits.
That's right. He broke a finger on his right hand after he was hit by a hockey stick during a training session in Perth a couple of weeks ago. Wow. So the impact leaves the top of his finger almost entirely severed, his Olympic dreams hanging in the balance.
Wow.
Doctors say the injury...
That's real.
Yeah.
Doctors say the injury will take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from, which would mean that he'd have to miss the Summer Games in France. Or he could have the top of his finger amputated and make it to the competition.
Wow.
So, a surgeon took about an inch off the end of his ring finger on his right hand, just below the top knuckle, and he made it to the Olympics.
Wow.
The guy has his finger amputated so he can go to the Olympics.
That is unreal. No for some, but yes for others.
He said he called his wife after talking about the amputation with the surgeon, and she warned him again against making such a rash decision. He said, with all the information, I had to make this decision in a pretty short period of time. I still decided to take it, and I can still have a pretty good functioning life with just a little less finger to worry about.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Right.
Mr. Dawson is in Paris for his third Olympics with the Kookaburras. I hope they win. I hope losing half your finger is really worth it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I understand also, as we all do, the amount of work these guys put into it, guys generically, men and women, and all the other, different genders. I'm just saying that a lot of people put a lot of time in to try to get to this apex of physical achievement and competitive achievement. And to get there and then not be able to participate because of a broken finger, that's...
Take it off. Take the finger off.
Right.
I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going in, coach. I'm going in.
This is no picnic, no summer camp.
You're not kidding.
He's Aussie. He could just walk that off. Those guys are tough.
He still has, 4 other working fingers on that hand. He'll be fine.
Sure.
As long as you can grip the hockey stick, I think you're going to work it out.
As long as you can still smash it, I mean, that's the important thing.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Yeah, he's got his, he looks good. He looks good.
Yeah, he really wanted to go. Really, really bad. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Oh, is it good? I can't taste it right now yet, but it's
Kim's
really
got
good.
The COVID. But I'll tell you that they have a new flavor coming out, a new flavored coffee. And they're so cool. They sent me like a little bag to sample it. And tomorrow, the Roastmaster General is going to join us, Cliff.
There's never been anything like this.
He will talk about this new flavor. And all I'll say is, well, I can tell you, of course, that it is a remarkable taste experience. Now, the new flavor. Now, you know me. I like it intense. I like it rich. I like it dark. The new flavor is just the opposite. It's sweet. It has a cinnamon finish. It's really almost like a gateway coffee. Like if you didn't like coffee or you didn't think, you're kind of like, I drink coffee, but I don't.
Gateway coffee.
You know, it is like one of the. It's so good that it seduces you into more. And I'm telling you, I just had it this morning for the first time. It just arrived, and it is delicious.
What's it called?
Exactly. What's it called? I just left it in the other room. I'm sorry, but we'll discuss it tomorrow. But so it's right now the mystery flavor. I don't think you can get it anyway yet, but we'll check with the Roastmaster General who joins us tomorrow. But the important word for everyone, their cold brew is amazing. They have the cold brew and they have decaf cold brew too. And that's just great. You just steep it, let it steep overnight. I think by instruction, it should be 19 hours of steeping. I think that's right. So almost a full day. And it's delicious. And that coffee is different than just putting coffee over ice. Their cold brew has certain tasting notes that are really special. So all of these things are part of the Coachella Valley coffee experience. They spend so much time on these things, you know, tasting and deciding and rejecting and exploring new farms that they work with in Latin America and Africa. And it's a remarkable place to find the taste experience that you enjoy. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And you can tell I really love their coffee and love their stuff. Also their tea, which is what Kim drinks and also what Courtney drinks. Do use the discount code MARKT at checkout. MARKT. When you go to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, you'll get 10% off anything on the website. So bravo. And the Roastmaster General joins us tomorrow. So it should be great. Yeah.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
It's the Mark Thompson Show.
The science is ridiculous.
Who is having that conversation?
Wow. I am delighted that you have joined us today. And we'll tell you, you probably think, well, Mark, you've had so many great guests. You had Anthony Davis through, you had John Rothmann through. You've got to be out of guests. No, you'd be wrong. There are more guests coming. Belinda Waymouth does a segment regularly. She's an eco-journalist. Her segment is called It's the Planet, Stupid. And so we'll get to that. I'll also give you a little more news from the campaign of Kamala Harris because something is happening that is truly, I think, I don't want to say unique to her campaign, but it's close to unique to her campaign. And you can see how it wouldn't have happened necessarily in the way it's happening for a Joe Biden or for a Donald Trump. That said, before I get to it, I want to do some law and disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
During the Trump-Russia investigation, two FBI agents were essentially smeared by the right and Donald Trump. He called them lovers. It was awful. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page are the two FBI agents I'm talking about. They got their messages, and then they interpreted the messages as some sort of deep state jihad they were on. Of course, it wasn't any kind of deep state thing. It was two FBI agents talking. And they, after all of this stuff went down, and now the entire cloud of that incident has blown over, they're still damaged. And they sued the U.S. government. They felt that their privacy rights were violated. And guess what? The court agreed. The government is paying Strzok $1.2 million and paying Page $800,000 in settlements. Strzok was a senior FBI counterintelligence agent who helped oversee the agency's investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. This is in 2016. He also worked on the investigation into 2016 Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's private email server. So he's working both sides. Page was an FBI lawyer involved in the Trump inquiry. Well, they both sued the Justice Department after officials with the FBI shared copies of text messages they sent. And they referred to President Trump as an idiot and a loathsome human. They sued. Government writes them both big checks because the government was wrong. And what's happened to both of them, I think, is, again, despicable. It's a smear. It's like what happened to Alexander Vindman when he testified. You'll remember they went after him. They destroyed him. They derailed his career before retirement. His retirement age was coming up. And not only did Trump go after the one Vindman, they went after his twin brother as well. Anyway, back to the two FBI agents. Well, I've been vindicated by this result. My fervent hope remains that our institutions of justice will never again play politics with the lives of their employees, Page said. Both Strzok and Page became subjects of right-wing ire after the messages leaked, with Trump repeatedly naming them specifically as evidence of a government conspiracy against him, and both left their jobs after the texts were leaked. I mean, these are public servants. When you work for the FBI and you work for the Justice Department, in large measure, those people are really trying to do good work. Now, the FBI, the Justice Department, replete with examples through history of not doing good work. But the idea somehow that you just throw these two people into this pit of political recriminatory rhetoric is disgusting to me, and that's exactly what Trump did. Strzok and Page filed these separate lawsuits in 2019 against the Department of Justice and the FBI for violating the Privacy Act by releasing their text to the press before turning them over to Congress. That's how this whole thing happened. The Justice Department Inspector General report concluded there's no evidence of a political bias in the investigation into the Trump campaign's tie to Russia. That was, again, from an Inspector General. So Merrick Garland said, it's not a question of reward, it's a question of the government paying for violating the law. And that's the end. Again, the settlement paid to these two former FBI agents, $1.2 million in the case of Strzok, $800,000 in the case of Page. Meantime, on the other side of town, it's happened. That's right. Starbucks has gone too far, my friends. Sales tumbling as customers are rejecting the high-priced coffee, Kim. Consumers have reached their breaking point with $6 iced coffees and lemonades at Starbucks.
Good day, sir.
Starbucks sales dropped 3% globally. 2% drop at its home North American market. That masked how steep the decline really was for Starbucks last quarter. Total transactions at North American stores open at least a year fell 6% in the quarter. That was offset in part by higher prices. Fewer people are going to Starbucks and buying drinks and food. Second straight quarter of sales decline. Could it be, Kim, that Starbucks, having enjoyed a honeymoon for so long, may have just pushed the limits of tolerance when it comes to price?
You know, we stopped going, and you want to know why? Because even though Coachella Valley iced tea isn't cheap, it's a lot cheaper than Starbucks. I think the quality's better, and when I make my Coachella Valley coffee iced tea, I can do it in a metal container, and I don't get the microplastics and pollute the world with plastic cups. So I feel like I'm doing better in a million ways. So maybe other people are following suit. I don't know.
Wow. Kim with an effective takedown of Starbucks. I thought that was very well done. When you've got Coachella Valley coffee.
Who needs it?
You can, who needs Starbucks? But they may be finding many people like Kim McAllister who've had enough, who don't want to pay exorbitant prices for drinks that aren't as good as Coachella Valley coffee and polluting the environment at the same time.
Yeah.
What is their strategy to win back customers, Kim?
more sales and new fall drinks. They have 3 new fall drinks that are coming out.
Mm.
And apparently they're doing the buy one, get one drink.
I see. Yeah. They're using a play from fast food chains, of course. The pairings menu. You get a drink and a breakfast item for $5 or $6.
Yeah.
It's called a pairings menu. They also rolled out new technology called the Siren system, which is designed to cut down the amount of time it takes to make cold drinks. Faster blenders, new dispensers. That's what this country needs. Faster blenders and new dispensers, everyone. And if I become your president, I'll see to it that we have the fastest blenders and the newest dispensers on earth. That's Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Smash the like button. Put that coffee down and smash the like button, damn it.
Put that coffee
down and smash the like button.
With your iron rod.
I am going to hit Belinda Waymouth here in a second with a nice, juicy It's the Planet Stupid. What is it, Kim? I can see you want to say something.
I do. I'm itching to tell you something.
What is that?
So Trump went to the National Association of Black Journalists today.
Oh, yeah.
Sat down with the folks there and had a discussion, and it didn't go well, Mark.
Oh, no.
No.
What happened?
He started talking about Kamala Harris and how all of a sudden he said, this is what he said. This is Trump's quote. She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black? I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't because she was Indian all the way. Then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person, he said. I think someone should look into that too.
Wow.
He's sitting in a room of America's black journalists, and he says Vice President Kamala Harris turned black. That didn't go over well. So then he got a bunch of other questions. He became more and more combative. And let's just say it wasn't a happy ending for him at the National Association of Black Journalists. It wasn't a happy moment. Yeah.
Wow. That is wild.
Yeah.
That is really wild.
Yeah.
Man. You know, it's interesting.
You're welcome.
He is told to walk softly, and he just can't do it. He just cannot do it.
Well, who let him go there?
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to open his mouth and something like that's going to come out.
Well, I mean, do you or don't, I guess. And he goes where he wants. You know, you can't argue with him.
Jeez.
You know, I don't know. He's digging his own grave politically. He does. He has, such support, and, we are dug in the way we are. But what is it, Albert?
Belinda is in the green room. She is
yes,
standing by.
And she is, I'm sure, very annoyed. But actually, I do have time. I give her a full 20 minutes here in a second. I promised you that Harris, I'll just tell you this quickly, and then I will get to Belinda. She will get her full time. Disabled voters for Harris, white dudes for Harris, crazy cat ladies for Harris. That's all stuff that's happening since Vice President Harris vaulted into becoming the likely Democratic nominee for president a week ago. There's all this identity-based grassroots support. That's why I was saying you're not going to find this. I mean, you might find veterans for Trump, but you're not going to find, the more they're critical of crazy cat ladies and, you find them actually forming a political force. So crazy cat ladies for Harris is a real thing. White dudes for Harris is a real thing.
White dudes for Harris raised $4 million in a Twitter call. I mean, come on.
Thank you. Unprecedented diversity in the political pool.
Yeah.
So these identity groups are coming together in a big way behind Kamala Harris. And it's organic. It is just happening. These are not things that are articulated strategies on the part of the Democrats. It's remarkable. So this is a phenomenon. And I want to tell you something, and I don't know that many hosts do this, but I want to do it now. And I was thinking about this last night because I could pull down a short that I put out early, because I was when Kamala Harris was spoken of before she had actually ascended to this position of being the presumptive Democratic nominee, I said, before everybody gets all excited about Kamala Harris, here's polling numbers on Kamala Harris before all the more recent polling numbers. And this is, again, before Biden had stepped back. And I kind of said, Kamala Harris doesn't poll well. I did a whole short on it, and I've made the point repeatedly here. And I want to say I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. I mean, I was following the pre-announcement numbers and that polling, and I was quite concerned. So I was sharing those concerns with you and those polling numbers, and I was completely wrong. This is a legitimate phenomenon. Now, I don't know how long it'll last, but voter enthusiasm is there. She's got young people. She has all of these different disparate groups. It's very possible that she'll be able to marshal the kind of political support that will propel her to the White House. Again, it's still a tough climb. Believe it or not, Trump still has the edge. Why is that? Because the Electoral College favors the GOP candidate regardless of who it is. So you've got to beat that Electoral College system. So that's why this all comes down to a handful of states. But I was certainly wrong about Kamala Harris. She has met the moment thus far, and more to the point, the politics of America have met her, and the frustration with Trump may be something that she can cash in on and actually cash in on politically and rise to the top. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
We do it once a week. We like to look at the Earth and the issues involving the planet. We do it in a segment we call It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid is eco-journalist Belinda Waymouth. Hello, Belinda. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Totally
You'll get
fine.
your full time. Please don't submit any paperwork about... I promise. I'll take nothing.
I won't.
All right.
Just this once.
All right. So you want to highlight the drop in emissions based on a public policy decision in London. And it is pretty cool, this entire thing. Please tell the story.
So good. It's so good. And also it comes hot on the heels of what you were just discussing, our presumptive Kamala Harris, because last week on the show, I was telling Kim, when she was vying to be the candidate back in 2019, 2020, she had the most progressive environmental platform. She was amazing. And she was really talking about carbon tax. And as we talked last week on the show, it is the most effective way that we're going to cut emissions. So let's talk about London. So in London, and lots of our listeners, viewers may know this, but back in 2003, they enacted a congestion charge. So if you were going to go into the center of London, anytime between 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, or on the weekends, noon until 6 p.m., you were going to have to pay $19. It lowered congestion. It did what it was meant to do. And the plan then, and I don't know if this was how they had sort of, enacted, thought about how it was going to be all the way along, but then a decade later, they did this. They introduced the carrot, and then 6 years after that, they introduced the stick. So in 2013, they said, okay, if you drive an electric vehicle, the area now it's going to be an ultra low emissions discount for anyone in an electric vehicle, and you won't have to pay the congestion fee because you're an electric vehicle, so you're not bringing smog into the center of the city. So that was enacted 2013. And then in 2019 came the stick. And that was when they called the congestion area the ultra low emissions zone. And if you were driving a diesel or a gasoline powered vehicle, you had to pay the congestion fee 24/7. You couldn't get in for free in the middle of the night. You were driving a polluting vehicle, and that was a no-go. And it started to make a real difference. And then what happened last year? So you've got a very progressive Labour Party mayor, Sadiq Khan in London, and he said, okay, we are going to expand the zone. It's not just going to be the center of London, it's going to be all the suburbs. And this was really ambitious because this is a 1,500 square kilometer area. And he said it's all going to be an ultra low emissions zone. And as you can imagine, people in suburbs, and it was going to lower congestion and emissions for 9 million people. But of course, there was a lot of pushback because people in the suburbs were like, no, we want to drive the cars that we're driving and we want to be able to do it whenever we want, and blah, blah, blah. His own party, the Labour Party, said, this is political suicide. The Tories came down on him. And what happened was he won his third term with a comfortable majority as the mayor of London. And emissions in those outer areas, so the two really bad ones from diesel and gasoline, as we know, are the particulate, the tiny little, 2.5, microns of particulate black pollution that we breathe into our lungs. It causes asthma, it causes cardiovascular disease. That dropped in the first 6 months by 22%. And then nitrogen oxide, which is, the second big polluter, what causes smog at the, as part of the, components of smog, that dropped by 21%. And then the other thing, which shows you how incredibly effective doing this, was that, so they say that the amount of money that London made, in the vicinity of 130 million pounds with these congestion charges, but that the money going into the coffers has been steadily reduced because people have been switching to electric vehicles. And they say that the congestion charge, they're estimating by 2026, no one will be paying into it anymore because they'll all be, driving, emissions-free vehicles.
Sure. It's fascinating to me. I always talk about the fact that let's forget about climate change, climate crisis, global warming, whatever. Forget about that. Don't you just want to get rid of the toxins in the air? I mean, there are, tens of thousands of tons of toxins being blasted into the air by cars and industry, et cetera, every day. Let's just deal with that. Forget about the, about the broader, the planet's going to be done and whatever. I'm just seeing this in the chat. Plants love that black. What is it? What is this?
Particulate, the black particulate? No, they don't.
Yeah, that black pollution is food for plants. I don't think so.
Nice try.
I don't think so. Yeah, Chris. Back to science class. What do you think?
Yes, science is ridiculous.
Thank you. You and that lady can carpool to science class together. It's remarkable. And the last time, and it relates to you, that I can remember a kind of dramatic drop in pollutants like that because of these congestion-related pollutants that you find in these big cities. And by the way, I saw in the chat also, I love big cities. I like the congestion as part of it. Yeah, you may like the congestion or you may like the sense of life and energy. I'm a city kid also. But I have to tell you, one of the things that's awful is the air. I mean, and go worldwide. You can smell is that carbon monoxide or that exhaust? You can smell it. I mean, if you can smell it, it's everywhere. So you can still have all the people. That's what Belinda's talking about. They have it in London, but minus a lot of that particulate matter. So what I was going to say is after when the COVID restrictions went in, you showed pictures of different cities and what they look like. And that's what I was thinking about as you were talking about the dramatic reduction in pollutants in London.
Yeah. Well, those photos of Beijing and what happened in big Chinese cities when, people were in lockdown, super, super dramatic. Look, the thing is, we're not saying that a big city is not going to be vibrant and bustling and amazing. I mean, the governor of New York has just had to walk back the congestion that they were going to be enacting this month for Manhattan. And the thing about that was, it was decided that it was just, this is pollution versus politics. I mean, what isn't everything versus politics right now? But that this is this is such a crucial election year. They didn't think it was going to be wise for New York to have this congestion fee. But the fact is the congestion fee, what they had, what it was, the benefits, lowering, terrible gridlock in Manhattan. I mean, it's ghastly trying to drive into Manhattan. It was going to, increase air quality, which everybody has a right to, cleaner air to breathe. But it was also going to bring in $1 billion of revenue per year. And that kitty that would then be spent on enhancing public transport. So yes, you can still get into the city, you can still move around, but you're doing it in mass transit and not in a way that's really harming you. And I saw someone in the chat talking about industry and airline travel and how huge they are. Airline travel is only 3% of emissions. And when, globally, annually, and when you're looking at an inner city, it's vehicles, the cars and the trucks that are driving around a city that are really the biggest cause of emissions. And so this is us doing ourselves a favor. This isn't, government top down, ruining our lives. This is government top down saying, hey, we want to improve your lives. And if you just look at what happened in London, and I tweeted the story if you want to, check it out, that motorists have complied, that this is moving them to electric vehicles. And the fact that they've had such a huge reduction in particulate pollution and in nitrogen oxide, that's going to help everyone. And this is our kids we're talking about. Do you want kids with asthma? I mean, I don't think we do.
Of course, you're right. Seniors and young people, but the seeds of emphysema and of asthma, et cetera, they're sown at very early ages. Okay, moving on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I've got another positive story, which I think is really important. There's one pretty heavy story. We can get to that in a minute. But another thing that just happened not long ago is scientists have worked out a way that we can effectively recycle fabrics that are not just solely polyester or cotton, but are blends. And those have been the things that have been super, super hard to recycle. And this is really important because we are throwing 92 million tons of clothes into the landfill every year. It is out of control. And if they've got polyester in them, that's plastic. So that's adding to the plastic load that we're putting into the environment. So they're going into landfills, they're being incinerated. And this is not okay. And what's been really hard is with these blended fabrics is they've just been, completely, you can't do anything with them because you can't separate them. So these scientists have come up with this way. You use microwaves, you use chemicals. It takes 15 minutes and you can separate them. So you get the polyester, which then you can break it down into little plastic pellets and it can be used to make more polyester. And you get the cotton, and that can be repurposed. The one thing about it, it's like plastic, like I always talk about with plastic. When we're recycling it, we're downcycling it. We're going into, lesser quality. And so really what we need to be doing with fabric, with, the clothing industry. I mean, right now we've got this, fast fashion that, just can't, manufacture, to sort of feed everyone's appetite for the latest thing. But we really, like with all resources, and I'll say this like a broken record, but we have to be more sustainable in the way we look at our use of clothing and how we buy, how we use clothing. You want to buy less, buy secondhand, go to consignment stores, mend and repair things, buy higher quality so it lasts longer. But the fact that there has been this breakthrough, with these hard to recycle fabrics is important. But what the scientists say is this is the last ditch effort because we want to do all these other things first, reusing, recycling, in reuse, buying less, mending so things last for longer, using higher quality. And then as a last ditch effort, we would use the chemicals in the microwaves to break down the blended fabrics. And so many things are. And the thing that, fast fashion doesn't tell us. Manufacturers in the garment industry, they're not into transparency, and they're putting, spandex into so many different things to make it stretchy, to make it, fit better. They're not telling you about that. They're not telling you about the chemicals that they use to make things, water resistant or waterproof. So I just, it's like a lot of things, as a buyer and a consumer, you want to do it in, in an enlightened way, and in a way that you're, thinking about the planet, because 92, million tons of clothes ending up in a landfill or being, incinerated every year is crazy. And what they say is, only, I think it's a super low, only it's less than 1% of clothes actually get turned into new clothes at this point. And that's too low,
The sustainability question is always one that's played out in so many different ways, and clothing is a way that, honestly, it can easily be overlooked. You just, but you're right. I mean, it's part of the game as well. And each of us in our own way can make a difference, because all of us together are each of us individually, right? So, it's cool to hear a story about, effective recycling and sustainability related to clothes. All right, give me my downer story on the way out.
Well, Kim said this one to me, and it's talking about heat, which we have talked about these past couple of months on the show because it has been so hot. But I suppose I just want to talk about this because I want our audience to be really aware of how dangerous heat is. Because, they say that once we get to about 88 degrees Fahrenheit, we're getting into a danger zone. And so the thing, everyone is talking about it. We had 1,300 people die at the Hajj, the annual pilgrimage at Mecca this year, 1,300. And those are just sort of the known and accounted for deaths. But what can happen is, after being exposed to this high heat, you can have a stroke or a heart attack later on, but it's actually because of the heat that you've been exposed to. They're very concerned about the Paris Olympics this week. What's going to happen to athletes when the temperatures get up to 95 degrees? That's too hot to be, performing at your best. I mean, even to be competing, that's really hot. So the thing with extreme heat, and when you get humidity added into it, is that, the body can't use its mechanisms that it usually uses for cooling off, because when you have sweat on the surface of your skin, the heat gets removed when that sweat is evaporated into the air. Well, when the air is really humid and already laden with moisture, it can't help the skin evaporate, can't help that heat transfer happen. And the other thing that happens is your heart is working super hard. Blood vessels are going to the surface. Why we get red in the face is another way of trying to release the heat in a body. They say that once a body gets to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, that's too hot. And once your internal temperature is at that heat level, but for a short period of time, 10 to 20 minutes, you're going into a real danger zone. And the other thing that happens is you can be, if you are in a position where you can sweat, whether you can let your moisture is being lifted off your body and evaporating into the air, you can get dehydrated super quickly and not actually realize until you're in a danger zone and it's too late. You've got to start drinking as soon as possible. But it's much harder for the heart, because when the blood volume goes down, the more that you sweat, and so then the heart is working harder to get this smaller volume of blood around your body. The blood vessels in your your neck and head will contract when it's super hot. You'll get less oxygen going to the brain and less glucose, and then you're not making good decisions. And this also puts you in a danger zone. So I've talked about this before on the show, within the next decade, they think 100 million Americans are going to be living in really hot zones. And at least one day a year, it'll be getting up to 125 degrees Fahrenheit where they live. So people need to know that, you get cold towels on you, you get fans going, you get in a cold bathtub, But the most important thing is when it's hot, don't go out and go running or hiking or doing these, really, sort of exertive sports when your body could go into this danger zone and your brain could get affected and you aren't able to make the good decisions to get yourself, into a safer situation. And I know it's sort of a horrible note to end on, but it's just we're moving into a hotter world. And they what the scientists are saying is we've weaponized summer, and we're going to be looking back on this period as kind of balmy because it's going to be much hotter. With the summers that we're heading into.
Wow, it's there are some brutal realities that we have to face. I mean, the warming of the ocean and the warming of that which is not covered by water, and the stuff that's not covered by water is getting so damn hot. It's uninhabitable, to use the word that is used there. Well, the good news is we're recycling clothes for more sustainability.
Yep.
The emissions dropping way off with the, what would you call them? Tariffs?
The thing is that they're sort of the closest thing, I suppose, to a carbon tax. It's like if you're going to admit, the thing that they did in 2019 in London, if you've got, a gasoline or diesel powered vehicle, it's going to cost you're going to have to pay. So a tariff, a fee.
A tariff or a tax, kind of.
It's like
so
a
it's an
carbon
economic disincentive to come into the city unless you have to, and apparently it is working. It's weird, we have the Golden Gate Bridge coming in from Marin. It's pretty expensive, but people still pack that bridge. So we haven't quite hit the number yet.
well, the thing is, what's happened in London, and the fact that Sadiq Khan, didn't get voted out, that actually he got voted back in with this comfortable majority. I would hope that our political leaders in other, cities, countries would take, note of this and go, look what he was able to achieve. It helps his constituents. It has raised a lot of money for the city. And it's really pushed the move to electric vehicles. So it's worked. It's a blueprint that's right there for everyone to see and then copy it. It's free to copy.
Sure. You're saying it's a great strategy that that can be employed in successful ways elsewhere. You can find Belinda Waymouth across social media at Belinda Waymouth, Waymouth. She's here with us on Wednesdays with It's the Planet Stupid. Belinda, we appreciate you and thank you. See you next time.
Pleasure. Bye, everyone.
That's It's the Planet Stupid for today.
More
It's the Planet Stupid. No. It's the Planet Stupid.
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on, everybody. Well, I'll tell you, it's a sad
The Mark Thompson
moment
Show.
in the show, and we kind of have to wrap up, but that's where we are. I'm trying to think, do I need to do anything else? Albert, do I? Is there, what do I need to do, Albert?
I think we're all caught up. Did we forget? I think we did get to this Maryland gunning.
No, we didn't. Maryland gunning. Come on. How about a $5 super sticker from Maryland? Big shout out to you, Maryland. I'm grateful. We are a crowd-funded show, so all the super stickers, super chats, stuff you leave after the fact when you're watching, that all matters. It helps keep the lights on here. G. Gaia says, speaking of the Olympics, I think the opening ceremony in Paris was the most creative of all time. I thought it was pretty great also. Expansive. The scale of it was immense. They did it in the driving rain, and they did it across the city. I thought it was spectacular. The mental ability needed to train your body to compete at that level is what blows me away, says B.A. Ware. Yeah, people talking about the Olympics, which we, I think, touched on at the beginning of the show, and I did a super chat yesterday that Mark hasn't read. Trevor Starr in Hollywood. What was that, Albert?
No.
Did you see it? Oh, Albert wasn't here yesterday.
I was not participating in the show yesterday.
Might have been Kim. I don't know what you said, pal. I don't mean to orphan any of you.
I blame you.
All right. Well, there's no need to blame anybody, Kim. But apparently we didn't get to that. So, Trevor, thank you. And thanks to everybody who comes to the show regularly and helps drive the action. You know what I'm saying?
The Mark Thompson Show.
I will tell you that tomorrow, David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, will be here. We've got a lot of legal stuff to talk about. I'll also, just to reference something that we spoke of today, I will discuss the legal remedies associated with things that might happen toward the election, meaning there are already preparations to deny the election results by election deniers who are in place. We talked about this in the first half hour, who won't certify the election. They've already sort of committed to that strategy and hoping to throw everything into chaos, then maybe throw it into the courts, and the Supreme Court will come in and rescue Donald Trump. Now, there are legal challenges that are available, and I'll discuss some of those with David Katz tomorrow. Also, the Roastmaster General from Coachella Valley Coffee, Cliff, will be here tomorrow.
What?
So that's going to be cool. Yeah.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim is doing the After Party Live, aren't you, Kim?
All the time. Bye-bye.
Over there on the After Party Live channel. Thanks for all the love, everyone. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.